At the recent conference for healthcare leaders, a seasoned leader shared with me this insight. He said, you know how in healthcare we're always trying to get our clinical staff to practice at the top of their license? He said, I believe that as leaders, we are not practicing at the top of our license. I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, when leaders don't take time to think and reflect and be proactive and be self-aware, I don't believe that we can say that we are practicing at the top of our license. No, what a powerful thought. Because I believe that the biggest challenge for leaders today, not just in healthcare, but in all industries, is lack of time for thinking and reflection. Leaders are so busy today, running from meeting to meeting, putting out fires, taking care of crisis, external and internal, navigating change and complexity, that there's no time for thinking. There's no time for reflection. There is no alone time. In fact, a Harvard Business Review study that asked executive assistants of top leaders to track their time while they're at work concluded that the only alone time that top leaders have on any given day is in chunks of 15 or 20 minutes or less. That's it, 15 or 20 minutes for themselves. And that is not enough for any kind of meaningful and deep thinking and reflection. And most leaders are not spending that time in thinking and reflection. They're spending it answering texts and answering emails, which creates more ambiguity and less clarity. Now we may ask, why are thinking and reflection so important for leaders? Well, self-awareness is the starting point of leadership. I mean, you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. And to lead yourself, you need to understand yourself. You need to know what you're good at, what you're not that good at, and the impact of your actions on others. That is self-awareness, and it requires deep thinking and reflection. I mean, most leaders think about these things occasionally, of course, but then the phone rings, a text message chimes, someone barges into your office, and the thinking is interrupted. And that is why proactive, intentional leadership is so hard these days. So what can leaders do to create time for thinking and reflection and to build and maintain their self-awareness? The best leaders I know that I have worked with follow one simple rule. They regularly block time on their calendar for thinking and reflection. They don't leave it up to chance. They schedule 30 minutes of planning on Monday morning, or 45 minutes for a deep thinking lunch on Wednesday, or 60 minutes of reflection on Friday afternoon, whatever makes sense for them and their schedules. And the time block appears as a meeting on their schedules so that others cannot override and schedule another meeting on top of that meeting. It appears as a meeting, just like any other meeting, but only one person is attending that meeting. The leader is meeting with himself or herself. And many leaders have told me that for them, it is the most important meeting of the week. Effective leaders also don't leave it up to chance once the meeting arrives. They don't just block the time and they're like, all right, now what do I do with the time? They move away from their laptops. They put their phones away. They put them in a drawer, or they put them on silent. And they sit down with a pen, a paper, and their thoughts. No distractions and no interaction with the outside world, for the sole purpose of thinking, of reflection. Now, for leaders who have never done this before, the first time could be daunting. And many of them ask me, I've scheduled the time, I've removed all the distractions, now what? What do I think about? How do I spend that time in a productive way? And I tell them, there are a few questions that you can start with. First, you can start with some simple questions such as, how am I showing up for my team? What am I doing well as a leader? What am I struggling with? What changes do I need to make as a leader? And then to think about their teams. Who on my team is doing a good job? Who do I need to recognize? And how do we rally together to support each other? Once you have these figured out, then you can move on to some more complex questions. Think of them more as prompt for your block time of thinking and reflection. What do I need to do to avoid standing in my way? That's a powerful one. What's the smallest step I can take towards a big thing today? What am I so worked up about? What stories am I making that are not based on facts? How can I assume positive intent towards my teammates? How do I give them the benefit of the doubt and trust them and then check with them? What blessings can I count right now? And what should I do to care less about impressing other people? And naturally, once you get into that habit where you're doing this on a periodic basis, new questions and new issues are going to appear. But the key is to stick with the habit of blocking time, thinking, and reflection. Again, you block it on your schedule, like a meeting. And you never cancel it, except if your boss calls, obviously. That is what self-aware, proactive, and intentional leaders do. And that's how they achieve high performance for themselves, for their teams, and their organizations. So my invitation to you as a leader is to block that time on your calendar and start practicing at the top of your license. Thank you for listening. And as the kids say, please like and subscribe.